Talk about prepping. I'm Tyler, your host, and we're just going to have a little bit of a brief Sunday morning chat with the topic of what if SHTF never happens, and just have a little bit of a chat mostly, see who pops up. For those of you rewatching, this is a topic that's been on my mind lately. What if the SHTF never happens? I know that it's pretty popular. The House of Cards metaphor to say that our society is untested, that the modern interconnected infrastructure is wobbly and just ready to go at any moment. But there's also an argument to be had that the interconnectedness gives our system a strength that it hasn't had before, that will maybe be the changing factor that allows us to overcome the challenges that have always held us back in the past. And I think that's an argument that's not had enough in this community as to whether or not the SHTF is inevitable. I think it's sort of assumed that it is inevitable, and I would tend to agree that we're more likely. Hey, Papermaker, how you doing? I would admit that we're probably more likely to experience a major catastrophe, like a world-changing catastrophe, than to simply go on with things being great for the rest of humanity's history. But I don't think that's a foregone conclusion. And I think a lot of preppers almost are banking on technology and society not progressing astronomically in the next generation. How cold is it there, Papermaker? Aren't you in Florida? Hey, Prescott, how you doing? Okay, well, thanks for listening. Drive safe. Keep us up to date on how things are going as you visit Virginia there, Prescott Caliber Club. Anyways, I was just talking about how I think a lot of preppers, it makes sense that our conversation is focused on catastrophes and things like that. But I think that a lot of preppers are actually focusing on that to the exclusion of wondering what they need to be doing to prepare for a future without an SHTF, and more importantly, what they need to be doing to prepare their children for a future without the SHTF. Everybody, hello, Forking Allotment, Josh Connor, James Thompson. Thanks for all dropping in. We're just talking about what if it's not an SHTF or a global collapse that we're in store for, but just a continuation of history. What if it's just more of the same? What if it's just another generation, more uncomfortableness? Maybe the economy does get tighter. Maybe there is a depression, but it's not enough to actually. Hello, Forkin from the UK. But you were the only one here first. Okay, that makes sense, Paper. Hey, Gil, how you doing? Just talking about how the future might be less exciting than a lot of preppers want it to be. Just sort of talking about what if there is not an SHTF or a major collapse, but just things continue. What if there's a major depression that just lasts 2-3 decades? What if actually nothing bad happens and technology and everything just only increases? I think a lot of preppers are not. Hello, Detroit. Said hi to Gil. What if things only get better? I think a lot of preppers are actually going to find themselves at a disadvantage if nothing bad happens compared to if something bad does happen. For instance, let's say, like I said, there's no SHTF, but technology increases. Let's say that revolutionary new food production methods come out. that allow us to produce all the food that everybody needs. Even in third world countries, they're able to rise up to first world status without any food problems. Um, and children, let's say that our children are going to be the first generation to have commercial space flight available to them. Are you raising your children to be competitive in a world with space commuting? You know, where the next being a pilot is actually being a space pilot? Because if things don't go wrong, we could see that in the next generation. If things actually go really well. And that's good, Gil. I think that if a prepper is doing it right, then they'll just be better off no matter what. But I think a lot of preppers are actually just doing more of the same when it comes to their children and stuff like that, just putting them through the same old school system. And there's not a lot of conversation being had on this, but whether it's the public school system or homeschooling, unless you're really giving them an advanced education, no education is preparing children for the next generation of the world. What I mean by that is there are things in the works that if they succeed and if there's not some major catastrophe, we could be looking at the next generation of technology and of society within the lifetime of myself and people younger than me, where, like I said, it's going to sound like sci-fi to some of you guys, but SpaceX, that is Elon Musk, Tesla's space company, they want to provide a means to fly, for instance, from America to Russia to Europe through suborbital flight in just a matter of a couple hours using space commuting. That kind of technology changes a lot about the world. And I don't think that people are prepared for the world, not just with suborbital space flight commutes, but with the next level of technology, with artificial intelligence starting to be applied in every level of business and industry, with automation. People are still learning things the way that we were learning them in the 90s, and that's not going to be applicable here no matter how the world ends up. Thank you, Connor. Appreciate that. With normal inflation, food and land ownership is of value, so growing your own food is of financial value. That's a very good point, Lazy Boys. One prep that is pretty much rock solid in almost any situation, whether that's a collapse or a progression into the future, is land. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate that. Hey, Anna, how you doing? That's one thing that I really want to do is get into some land. Now, obviously, I've always wanted to buy land further out in the mountains and have my cabin in the woods kind of thing. But right now, that's further in the future. Pardon me. And right now, if I were to buy land in the next couple of years, it would be to buy land to develop for the value growth. Something sustainable that would be something I'd want to be on if a collapse did happen, but something that I'd purchase knowing that 5-10 years down the road, it will have appreciated in value and I can sell that to buy my parcel out deeper in the woods. And Ryan is driving, so he may not be answering right now, but he just got into Virginia, so he's driving through Virginia right now. Yeah, Papermaker. There will always be mundane reasons to prep, and as disastrous as hurricanes or gigantic earthquakes are, those are still mundane, normal things that humans deal with and have always dealt with. And they may be personal SHTFs, although I disagree with that word. But I'm talking about the kind, preppers believe that there's going to be, hey, Jeremy, how you doing? living the dream of homestead in the house. Uh, but preppers always have these, the whole world will collapse situations. And I would argue that, all right, let's say that an EMP completely decimates the electronics on a whole half of the planet. There would be ripple effects from that. Pardon me. There would be ripple effects from a large EMP or solar flare or CME effect on one side of the planet. But it would be possible that the other side of the planet would be able to stagger on. And while that would almost certainly trigger pretty much a full SHTF situation in any countries that really got the full effect of that, that's a whole half of the world that might be limping on, which might continue to have spaceflight technology, which would be arguable in that situation. But even in some of the situations that we talk about as being the reset button types of events, it's possible that enough of the world limps on to eventually bring back what remains of the crippled part of the world to something looking like a modern level of society. So mostly here, while I do definitely believe at least 50% in the House of Cards analogy, that, or the domino effect type of thing, where, for instance, if enough of the planet were to be sent back to the Stone Age, that would probably bring the rest of the planet with it. I'm also prone to thinking that the way that things are set up now, the way that different parts of the world are able to support each other through trade and things like that, through modern technology, I definitely think that we're looking at something a little different than it has been in the past. A lot of the famines of the past, a lot of the mass die-offs of the past could have been alleviated through modern transportation techniques and stuff like that. Now, whether or not we'll ever get around to having the application of that technology to save lives is another question. But mostly what I wanted to do here today is ask people what they thought about about the situation, about the SHTF never happening and things just progressing. Are you preparing for the future with no SHTF? Are you preparing your children for a future where there's no collapse, no calamity, but technology increases? Maybe they're some of the first just regular civilians to experience space flight. It's entirely possible that if you have children who are younger than 20, that they may be eligible to work in some kind of moon industry, because there are multiple entities talking about putting actual workers on the moon, building the next generation of space vehicles. And if that happens, it will be in the next generation, unless we're really set back by multiple generations by something that happens. I just don't see people preparing their children for the space generation, which, I mean, maybe it sounds far-fetched to some of you guys, but if you go and look at what at least some companies are really trying to do within the next 30, 40 years with technology, not many children are being prepared to be the ones pushing that work forward. But, I mean, probably a lot of the ones doing that work aren't even born yet. So, just some very interesting thoughts, and they're thoughts that, I really don't hear being talked about in many places, not just in the prepping community, but I do follow futurism channels and stuff like that, and there just is not a lot of conversation being had about, all right, what if this stuff really happens? What should we be doing to prepare for it? And I think that that's valuable conversation to be having. And I think if anyone should be having it, it should be us preppers. We should be preparing for the future, for emerging changes, for the end of the world as we know it, whether it's because of catastrophes or because of the evolution of the world as we know it. Well, Papermaker, I think that we're going to find out about, I mean, if you don't believe in space, we'll find out about that in the next generation because, well, I mean, I guess people can always believe that they're being fed a hallucination, but once you can board a bus and go there, it's going to be hard to deny it. Or once you're supposed to be able to board a bus and go there, but you can't for some reason, maybe there will be another level to that argument. Oh, I know you were watching that abort test of SpaceX. Pretty amazing stuff. I sure love big rockets. Really, forking allotment. Well, don't let your opinion be informed too much by what you see here on YouTube. There's a lot of good stuff, and there's a lot of really misleading, crazy stuff that would be... it'd be sad if you got your opinion formed by some of the crazies on here. I was actually started filming my "What Do I Think Prepping Is" video for a little bit of a channel intro to replace my last one on here. Sort of talking about my take on what prepping is and why it's should be a part of everybody's life. My opinion is a little bit different. Oh, from Virginia. Gotcha. My opinion on prepping is a little bit different from probably what a lot of people would. Well, there's a lot of different reasons that people get into it. That's one of the most important things to understand. People get into prepping and sustainable lifestyle, which are pretty much the same thing whenever it really gets down to it, when you really boil each one down to its roots. Well, forking allotment, there are people in the UK who prep. It sort of has a different face over there, and that sort of plays into what I'm saying about there's a lot of different faces to prepping. A lot of people get into it because they found it on the internet, but other people get into it because of political reasons or conspiracy theories, or they started learning about the financial system and realized that there is a possibility for an economic collapse, or a food crisis, or just the various different things that our society might face as big society challenging problems. People really get to it from different points of view. But yes, it's true that it's just not nearly as popular in the UK. Over here, it is a whole trend. But yeah, if you guys all know any good UK channels, throw them out there for forking in case they care to hear it. Hoople's Cat, EPL, Emergency Preparedness Lifestyle. I'll grab a link for you. But he's a friend of most of ours in here. He's a Canadian, but he's a former Brit. So you would probably enjoy him. He has a very British sense of humor. And he actually has a take on prepping that's sort of contrary to what a lot of us on here usually go for. But he has very good information. He's a little bit of a nut, though. Just warning you. But a lot of us on here are. Anyways, myself and Hoople's Cat, who I just mentioned, and a number of the other channels who are in here or who frequent my comment section are we like to think of ourselves as looking at the prepping movement a little bit objectively. And it's something that people have been doing for generations around here. And it's sort of gotten into a little bit of a fishbowl effect. Hey, D-Mac, how you doing? So there are a few of us who are trying to analyze why preppers talk about things the way they do. But part of that is actually living self-sufficiently. A lot of us believe that the end goal of a prepper basically will boil down to being completely self-sufficient for most of the things that they need, as far as they're capable of being. Now, a lot of preppers just focus on buying gear or buying large stashes of food and ammunition or supplies and just trying to be able to get through any situation that faces them with the things that they've stored up, that they've purchased. And while that can be a decent strategy, a lot of people who really get into the depths of the conversation basically end up trying to live something looking like a homesteading or self-sufficiency lifestyle. Yeah, and I agree with that, Detroit. I definitely believe in keeping and just raising kids to have that readiness, that preparedness mentality, even if it isn't necessarily being into prepping, but just raising your children with the mentality that thinking about the future, that preparing for potential threats is an important thing to do, puts them a step ahead of a lot of people, because just people don't raise their children with the idea of pondering the future and preparing against bad things that might happen. Yeah, good to see you, Dan. I haven't seen you around a lot. How are things going for you? Hey, Jim Beer, how you doing? But yeah, just that mentality of being prepared, of looking at the future and trying to set yourself up to excel for what that future might bring is going to help your children a lot, no matter what happens. But I also think that it's worth stepping back and looking objectively at what the future might bring and trying to condition your child to be fittest for that environment. I mean, it still is about survival of the fittest. And if you can raise your child to be mentally prepared for whatever the actual future might bring, they're going to be a step ahead of kids who are just being raised in the public education system to expect more of the same, like it's just going to be a repeat of the 90s into the double aughts. Starting a new job, not at the gun store anymore. What are you going to be doing now, Dan? Yeah, Gil, a well-rounded prepper gets knowledge, skills, as well as food and weapon stores. This is part of why I actually want to find a new term for the next generation of what prepping and sustainability is. And I like the term prepsteader. It's a little too campy to gain popularity out of anybody who's not already interested in that. That's funny, Anna. But yeah, a real prepper is, I mean, I believe that the logical conclusion of a prepper is to be somebody who continues to try to gain skills and knowledge and the gear and just the ability to do whatever they might need to do to fortify themselves. I mean, fortitude, I actually lately have really been coming around to feeling is the most, the defining factor of what you want. Hey, Kraken, how you doing? Um, engineering company. Nice. Yeah, that's not bad at all. Very good, Dan. Um, but yeah, really, fortitude is one of the things that I think is the goal for a lot of preppers and sustainable living individuals, the green community, even 3%ers and constitutionalists and stuff like that. Um, everybody's just looking to be independent and be able to see their own way, to not to basically not be reliant on other people. Because being reliant on other people means taxes, it means needing to follow their rules and all that stuff. So I think for a lot of people, whether you're trying to be prepared for emergencies, you just want to live in your own footprint, or all these different things. Um, what it comes down to is fortitude within yourself and within your life. All your stuff you want to have. You don't want to worry about being able to have your things, basically, your property and all the stuff that you need to live and be comfortable. Um, yeah, and it does, Gil. That's why I do it, and I mean, it's always a constant struggle as the name gets co-opted or demonized by somebody. But I do think that there is some niche out there for us to find. Lately, obviously, I keep wanting to try to shoehorn in with the green and sustainable, the sustainable living community, because I do believe that's one of the biggest next waves of all this. Um, yeah, Lucky, I've heard about the virus from China, but it's so far for me, it's just another illness like all the other ones that pop up and kill a couple of people. Unless you're talking about the pig one, that one is concerning. But if you're talking about the cluster, uh, I think the pneumonia-like cluster in China, that one's not acting like anything more than just a regular occasional mutation, as far as I know. Well, no, not necessarily with Agenda 21, because to me, Agenda 21 is centralizing people into cities, and a lot of the green movement is doing a back to earth kind of thing, and that requires, an acre or two if you're going to be doing your greenhouses and you're living off the land in a green, a carbon neutral footprint, essentially. You actually can't do that in the city. They're trying to get the whole um, vertical farming thing going so you can live in a carbon neutral city, but cities are not carbon neutral. They pretty much can't be. Um, so a lot of that back to earth stuff, the green, sustainable living, a lot of people don't realize that even with that, the ultimate conclusion is to move out into the country, and you need about 2 or 3 acres per person to really get all of your solar, all of your food, all your water cycles going. Even if you're doing a fully modern green setup. Um, so I don't feel now the political perspective of the Agenda 21 stuff is to get people to want to sacrifice their own self-interest, if you will, for the sake of the environment, even if that means moving into a cramped city and leaving nature to reclaim itself. But when you're talking about the actual green, sustainable living, back to earth kind of, I don't want to, I want to decrease my carbon footprint. I want to stop buying plastics. I want to stop buying outsourced food. All those, basically people who are not necessarily looking at climate change or any political thing, but they're, a lot of people are identifying microplastics. They don't want to buy things that are plastic that just go in a landfill and break down and seep out into the water table. So they're trying, and basically the only way to really to truly get away from buying packaged goods is to live off the grid in a sustainable lifestyle, growing mostly your own food and trading for the rest and having a job. I don't even know what that means, Leo. So pretty much no matter a lot of movements, a lot of causes that people are taking up these days, all sort of trickled down to the modern, self-sustaining type of thing. So I think that that's fleshing out as one of the unifying factors for a lot of stuff. And I think that preppers, maybe need to stop identifying with all the prepping stuff and just sort of shoehorn in with all the people doing the solar, all the people doing the sustainable living. And, if you're prepping, if you're doing all the stuff on the side, then that's one thing. But I think that the prepper identity is becoming a hindrance in a world where a lot of people are already trying to do something very similar to it, without necessarily some of the few defining beliefs and characteristics of being a prepper. Yeah, Jeremy. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, if you found a prepper or a channel who's just sitting there saying that they've been doing this forever, and so they're just here to tell you how to do it, and they don't need to be, they're not actively learning themselves, that person is full of it, because there's almost every endeavor in humanity, almost anything that humans try to do, any hobby, any skill or craft that humans take on can fall under the umbrella of prepping and sustainability in some way. So if a person has reached this point where they say, I've achieved my prepping or my sustainability goal, and I can simply stand here and beckon others forward without needing to further myself, they're full of it, because there's always something that you need to be learning. If you computer sciences. I can't think of many preppers who have reached their goals who are skilled in computer sciences, which is strike one. Well, Detroit, do we need to worry about them? I mean, I'm not necessarily arguing the carbon neutral footprint thing here. I'm just saying that it's one of the main reasons that a lot of people are wanting to do it. But the thing about climate change, let's say that climate change or global warming is true. If humanity doesn't fix the problem in time, then the only threat is a lot of people die. And you can sort of, play that as a big threat to everybody individually. But if you are an individual who is preparing to live sustainably, to live off the grid, to not rely on the food production from others, from major food production areas, if you're not living on the coast, if you're not threatened by the climate changes that will happen if CO2 emissions were to be causing such a thing, then you really don't need to worry about what everybody else is doing. There's sort of this misnomer about all this, where it's like we need to make if they don't fix the problem, then they might die. If they don't fix the problem, then yeah, maybe climate change will happen. But the Earth was never going to die. Humans were going to die. They might experience a mini ice age. But if there's anything that we here in the prepping community talk about and feel comfortable fantasizing about, it's a mini ice age. So if we're talking about trying to gather together the communities who are interested in sustainable living and preparing for calamities, whether they're caused by the grand solar minimum or not, or climate change, or nuclear war, or the Anunnaki, or whatever you want, there's so many different groups that are preparing for the same thing, minus some of the political BS that everybody cares so much about, that we can sort of just focus on that group and not worry about the rest, because in any given endeavor, it's only about 10% that get it done, if even that. It's often even just 3%. You look at revolutions, you look at even business endeavors. I think it's the 2080 rule that literally in any business endeavor, any project, anything like that, it's only 20% of the workers, or on an individual level, only 20% of your effort really is what goes to producing the end results. The rest of the 80% is often waste and inefficiency and stuff like that. And that even goes down all the way up to the population level. It doesn't really matter if 80% of people are not preparing for anything. They might die, but as long as you're part of the 20% and as long as you're ready for the struggle that comes next, then don't worry about it. So what is everybody up to today? I've pretty much spouted what I had to spout for you guys. Oh, I mean, it sounds cold, Gil, that's true, but I mean, if somebody wants to, then I will be the one to help them. But I can't help somebody who doesn't want to be helped, and none of us can, So yeah, we can't worry about the people who don't want to, who we can't reach, and who won't listen when we reach them. So, we're not going to make anybody else go carbon neutral, even if it is a goal that we have. We're not going to make anybody else prepare for the collapse, even though that would help us. But if they come to where we can reach them, then maybe we can. But when it really comes down to it, humanity can survive off of only 10,000 individuals as long as they're close enough to reproduce. So, I mean, that'd be pretty harsh, but as long as we just focus on ourselves and those who we can help, then that's all we really can do, or all we need to worry about. All right, so what are people doing? UP Gardner is feeding rabbits and chickens. Sounds like a good time. paper maker is off today. Goes back to work on day shift starting tomorrow. Anna's cleaning house. Oh, scroll down too far. Anna's cleaning house, bathing small child, and cooking. All right, well, don't get those mixed up, Anna. So that she can sit in front of the computer all day tomorrow and watch the rally. Oh, yeah, that's tomorrow, isn't it? Lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I bet you could trick the horse into drinking. If you put something really good smelling in the water, like apple juice or something, you could probably get the. You just got to be smarter than the horse is all it is. But if the horse won't drink the water, then actually no, that's a myth. Horses will drink poisoned water. Gil is still retired. Very nice. Tired yesterday and tired again today. I hear ya. 9 degrees Fahrenheit where Detroit prepping is at, trying to stay warm. I hear you. It's 33 here. I'm actually worried it's going to start melting my snow cave a little bit. Dan's going to family dinner at Mom's house, making crawfish pies. That sounds pretty good. I haven't had crawfish in years. Anna. Yeah, I mean, that's a little chilly at 9 degrees. When I lived in my mini home, it's so small and well insulated that the wood stove actually was way too much for it. And it was just a cheap boxwood stove, so I couldn't damper it down too much. So I'd actually just have to leave the door and the window open almost all winter long just because it was so powerful, that little stove, for how well insulated that box was. For me, most of the fun is in trapping the crawfish. I mean, I'd rather go crabbing if I'm going to be, doing that kind of harvesting, because you get more meat and they're little, I don't know. I like hucking crab. And it's sort of fun to go crabbing. But, yeah, for me, the funner part is tromping around in the creeks and streams, checking your traps and stuff. Yeah, Anna, we've been getting weird fluctuations. It was down to 20 degrees just yesterday, I think, or the day before. And then jumping back up again today. Which I'd rather that it was colder, because I'm worried about my my snow cave out back starting to melt down a little bit. Hopefully the temperature tonight will freeze enough to get it recrusted. I'm going to have to go buy an entrenching tool or something. I thought I had a short shovel somewhere, but all of my shovels are too long to dig inside of a tunnel. And I've got an entrenching tool somewhere, but it's probably buried in my preps, my camping gear. So might be better off going and just buying a little camp shovel or like I said, an entrenching tool. Wow, it's going to be warm today. Yeah, Kraken. Crab is good. I grew up a few places, but I spent my teens in Oregon. So for Boy Scouts, we spent a lot of time on the coast or on Mount Hood. But when we were on the coast, we'd often go to the Tillamook Bay area and visit the Tillamook Dairy Factory, which is delicious. And then we'd go out to the bay and go out crabbing on a boat, or we'd go to Camp Merriweather and do, camp exercises there. Mild, yeah, and mild winters do tend to lead to a lot of bugs and then illness after that. That's one of the reasons that I love my frozen winters up north is there really are not many bugs or reptiles or pests like that. Uh, I think really the worst thing that you might have to deal with is a skunk. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, there are mosquitoes, but they're not likely to have any illnesses, and they really aren't even that bad, even just compared to Oregon. The mosquitoes here are just almost a non-issue. Hornets, I guess. We have hornets. Yes, Dan, Tillamook ice cream is hands down the best ice cream. Well, yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And you can tell the only things that even come close are things that have cream as the first ingredient. And that's really one of the first things that you can tell. I won't even purchase an ice cream if water is the first ingredient. It's got to be cream. I don't know, Detroit Preppin'. You might like Idaho. We have 4 seasons, and they come every single day. And yeah, we don't have as much water as Michigan has, but we've got a lot of fresh water. I think we have some of the most fresh water for a landlocked state outside of the Great Lakes area, which are inland oceans. You got porcupines, Gardner. Hey, Ontario, how you doing? I don't think that I've got porcupines out here. They would be pretty few and far between. Briars. Yeah, I think Blue Bunny is made from cream, but yeah, Tillamook is really my go-to. Montana channels. There are a few, but somehow I don't know off the top of my head a lot of Montana channels. For one thing, anyone in the Panhandle of Idaho is within 20 minutes of Montana. But yeah. So Byron O'Brien asked, what is SHTF? SHTF is an acronym for the shit hitting the fan, which is basically a term used to describe a complete collapse of basically all forms of society. For instance, if there was just a major outbreak of war, like a nuclear war or something like that, and society broke down, there was violence in the street, there was no food coming to the market, there was no gas at the gas stations, basically just such a complete and overwhelming catastrophe that everything changes. But that is sort of a very extreme situation. A lot of people in the prepping and sustainable living community don't believe necessarily that it will be an SHTF situation, but more that there will be a second Great Depression or a slow degrade into sort of a dystopian type of society for a while, more than some kind of extreme situation. Um, just because that's not exactly racist and it's pretty funny, I'm going to leave it stand. But I don't believe that the French actually have too much to do with what's going on. Why don't you like the French? Did Lord Byron dislike the French? I think that's the case. He was a Francophile, wasn't he? See, Gil, I don't know. I think the end of the world as we know it, I don't think is because the end of the world as we know it could come about from cold fusion technology or artificial intelligence. But I don't believe that would be worse than an SHTF event. To me, an SHTF is about as bad as it gets because it's literally just it gets everywhere. Nothing remains unchanged. Nothing is not worsened. Everything gets shit on it. The end of the world as we know it can be a good thing. I mean, there are a lot of things about the world as we know it that are a problem. You could just about end the world as we know it and fix a lot of problems. So I don't necessarily take it as a given that the end of the world as we know it is a more catastrophic situation than an SHTF. And I think a lot of people misuse the word SHTF. This is actually coming up in the prepper terminology disambiguation series. There's no such thing as a personal SHTF unless everybody that you know and care about has died. You have no money, no job, just everything has fallen apart all around you. Otherwise, it's a disaster or a setback or a challenge. But imagine that crap has hit a fan in the room that you're at and has spewed poop onto every single thing in sight. That is a situation that cannot be redeemed without basically burning everything. And that a lot of situations just don't amount to that level of catastrophe. I like this French thread that's going on in here. It's sort of funny. Sorry to any French people that end up watching this. I don't condone French hatred, but because it is a nationality and not necessarily an ethnicity, I'm going to let it stand, all right? Lord knows that they bash on Americans. The algorithm. Does Al Gore have a good rhythm? I've never heard him sing before. But a lot of people on YouTube are talking about the Al Gore rhythm. So it must be a pretty good song. I've never heard those definitions before, Gil. I've only just heard what everybody thinks of them. But the end of the world as we know it, I mean, the switch from horse-drawn carriages to automobiles caused the end of the world as people knew it. I mean, no part of life was left unchanged from the switch between biological horsepower and mechanical horsepower or electricity or just all these things. Those were the end of the world as we know it. I mean, there are multiple technologies that would cause the end of the world as we know it. But I would argue would just cause a new world as we knew it. But for people invested in that, it would be disastrous. For people invested in the horse-drawn buggy, or in oil lanterns or things like that, the change in the world was disastrous for them. Ryan, that sounds like a pretty common experience of the French. They were mean and somebody tried to rob them. All right, Detroit Preppin, I want to talk about this, not to call you out because your argument is very fair. But I don't believe necessarily that artificial intelligence just immediately becomes a threat. And it's hard to argue this without really getting into the weeds in it, but artificial intelligence is still a program, and it still just does what you write it to do. If you don't want it to be able to change its own code and adapt and evolve exponentially, then you simply don't give it the ability to do that. It isn't really like in movies where Ultron develops the ability to produce code where before it didn't have that. It doesn't really work like that, but yes, it is possible that someone would be stupid enough to do such a thing eventually, but it's still something that you have to try to do. You know that you're crossing that line very well. I mean, it takes a very long time to code that program with the full knowledge that what you're doing is trying to produce something that can go outside of the bounds you've produced for it. But the real threat from artificial intelligence isn't necessarily that an artificially intelligent robot factory for cars is going to take over the world to produce cars out of everything. Sort of like, there's a joke about an artificially intelligent paperclip maker that takes over the world because somebody forgot to limit its goal to produce paperclips out of everything. You just have a machine that's really, really good at making paperclips. But the real threat from artificial intelligence comes from the disruption. It's the kind of thing that will cause companies to fire whole droves of people because there's simply no way around it. If you can do something more efficiently using autonomy or using a program just by asking Google to solve problems for you using their artificial intelligence, because that's what a lot of it comes down to is think tanks, engineers, architects, people whose jobs are based around thinking, crunching numbers, solving problems that can be solved through brute force computing. Those people all fall out of the job, and all of the industries that they support with their money suffer as a result. So the real threat in the very short term doesn't come from AI going crazy and going all Skynet on us. It comes directly from the disruption, the end of the world as we know it. The fact that all of these college degrees that are the most valuable currently are now completely useless because one or two companies developed an AI program that can solve problems for thousands of other companies instantaneously. That's the thing, Kraken, is either the machines are they'll either have machines that'll fix other machines. The machines will either identify their own problems in time to fix them before they need outside interference, or they're simply going to reduce the number of people needed to be involved in the process down to 4 or 5 programmers. But no matter what it is, it's going to result in disruption to how things have been. Earthquake in Wichita, huh? Brian, I'm not looking to get ethnic on this. If you want to get into race and stuff, we'll probably have to end the conversation. It was funny while we were joking about nationalities because that's funny, but all right, Anna, thanks for dropping in. Yeah, we'll probably be wrapping it up soon. I got to get ready for work eventually. A lot of that stuff with the AI and robots and all that stuff is just so far down the road after a lot of the other problems that we have to face. A lot of that is just a lot of people losing their jobs as industries change. I mean, we could be looking at the generation where the oil industry really takes a hit from sustainable energies. We could be looking at the automotive industries really taking a hit. There's a lot of different things that could be disrupted in our generation. I mean, you can talk about Brexit. I'm sure there's a couple people in here who have interest in it. I try to stray away from political stuff because it doesn't generally overlap with what I talk about here too much. But if people here want to discuss it politely, that's fine. Well, Detroit, I mean, I'm willing to laugh at nationalities, because that's not racist in most cases. If you want to talk about why the national policies of a given nation are dumb or something about their culture that doesn't have to do with race or things like that, but that's just on a risk, like the board game of Risk, just taking shots at each other. But if we're going to start getting into generalizations about demographics or talking about different ethnicities being better than others, that's not going to fly. Let's keep it constructive, though, everybody. I mean, there's no point in just being nasty if you're the only one who cares about that. Imagine being 100. Yep. I imagine that the 100-year-old individuals who can really understand the way of the world right now have a lot to look back on. The French, the French did produce a lot of culinary advancements, and I'll give them credit for that. I really don't have a problem with the French. I find that one funny. Yeah, Gil really likes mayo. Don't. Hey, mayo's popular, guys. I'm sure some of you missed it, but I made a video about how I'm a rich man. When the grid goes down and people want mayonnaise for their sandwiches and their barbecues, I'll be trading these things for like 5 bullets a packet. is probably the best way to store mayonnaise. All right, little late stream life hack for you guys. If you don't have refrigeration, your mayonnaise is going to go bad if you open the jar. You can buy these. They're really actually not that much more expensive than the same amount of mayonnaise in the jar. So you just have individual packets, and you can get that kind of stuff at the food supply warehouse in your town. Any decently sized town in America has a food supply warehouse where you can where restaurants go to restock stuff when they run out between freight deliveries. So it's usually something like Smart Warehouse or Cash and Carry or Food Warehouse or something like that. But like I said, it's things that a restaurant would carry. So individual packets of condiments, big number 10 cans of different things that you cook with, big, Costco sized things of produce and stuff like that. Just really good stuff. No, Kraken, I will be getting 5 bullets for my mayonnaise packets. All right. You can reload bullets. Can't reload mayonnaise packets. Mayonnaise on the spaghetti. At first, that seems wrong, but I'm willing to give it some time and think about it, all right? All right, what's the difference, Byron? Yes, Ontario. I'm not a big fan of single-use plastic just because it is wasteful. I realize it is the cheapest way, but yeah, Kraken, actually, there's a couple ketchups in there. So that mayonnaise box has already been expanded because, yes, I do grab some extras, taco sauces and ketchup and stuff like that. But a while back, I was making a sandwich. Oh, the conversation was tuna, because I like to eat tuna. And I was sharing a video where I made a tuna salad sandwich with mayonnaise, and everybody was saying, "How are you going to make that after the grid goes down without mayonnaise?" Palmetto Prepared, he has actually made mayonnaise, homemade mayonnaise. Oh, that's cute. That is cute. That's completely not true. We do have a culture a lot of people make fun of, but it is cute. I don't think yogurt has ever overthrown the grasp of a world-spanning empire using only a few peasants, because that's what happened. But that is a good one. Anyways, Palmetto Prepared has made a mayonnaise that you can make off-grid, and which is actually shelf counter-stable for a day or so. But I decided to get some of these single-use mayonnaise because they're good to store, and they'll let you make individual tuna sandwiches after the grid goes down. Yep, oil and an egg. Here. But yeah, Anthony at Palmetto Prepared really is one of my favorite channels currently. He is a buddy of mine. And he really makes, he makes valuable videos about valuable information. Whether it's cooking, which a lot of it is good meals that you can make using your preps and stuff, which is more valuable than most people give it credit for. But even just down to earth stuff about bug out bags or gear or whatever, his opinions on just run-of-the-mill prepping topics are pretty much always spot on, in my opinion. He's a funny-looking guy. I'll give him that, but Oh, dang it. Come on. Where am I going to get tuna? I'm going to go spear it out of the ocean, Ryan. No, I've got, yeah, chicken. It's the tuna of the land. Tuna, chicken of the sea, chicken, tuna of the land. Now, I've got a bit of tuna. I'm not going to have years worth of tuna, but I might have enough tuna to use up that box of packets. But yeah, mayonnaise is good for more than just tuna. Are you telling me you're going to have a ham sandwich without mayonnaise on it? Because you can have a ham sandwich in the grid down. You'd be ashamed to have a ham sandwich without no mayonnaise. Mm-hmm. Ham and mustard. Kraken, you better watch yourself. I'm not one to put people on timeout, but mustard is one of. Oh, he heard. He heard. I knew that he heard. But mustard is one of the few things that's going to get you kicked out of my channel, my friend. You keep your mustard eating ways to yourself now. Hey, Tony, how you doing? We were just saying only good things about you. Only good things. We're just talking about your good looks and your good channel and your smarts. Only good things. Yes, we were talking about mayonnaise. I was just sharing my box of mayonnaise packets, and I was talking about how you make mayonnaise videos. You're the mayonnaise guy, right? Hey guys, it's the mayonnaise guy. Okay, Byron, that's just not even true. Britannia does not rule the waves. There's only one all-ocean navy right now, unfortunately. You hear that, guys? There's always mayonnaise on at Tony's house. It's just sourdough bread and mayonnaise is what those guys live off of. Captain Mayonnaise. Yes, Captain Mayonnaise. The Mayonnaise Man. The amazing man of mayonnaise. Wow, Prepper Logic posted. I haven't seen from Prepper Logic in a while. Well, no, Byron, I know that the British have historically ruled the waves for a lot of time, but if you think that they currently have the strongest navy, I mean, they're lucky to be allied with the strongest navy. That's nice, but it just, yeah. Doing good, Tony. We were just chatting earlier about what if the SHTF never happened, uh, and things just sort of go on the way they are, or get better, or just get a little worse, but not all the way worse. And then we just sort of fell into the rabbit hole and wound up on mayonnaise. I did tell myself as we were talking about you that if you showed up, it's confirmation that you're part of the alphabet agencies. So, hello, Mr. NSA agent. Bread, mayo, and Tillamook. I can get behind that sandwich. Yeah, I hope it never happens. I think any reasonable person hopes that the SHTF or major collapse never happens. But here we are on the internet, and that's all we can talk about. And I sort of wonder why preppers are never talking about what if this doesn't happen? Because most preppers, as far as I can tell, are pretty much banking on that, and as far as they're not preparing for anything else. Byron says that the British will rule the waves once again. Wait a minute. Did Tony just say that he's been on my roof all day? That confirms that he's a spy. He's been up there wiretapping me. Thought I heard something going on up there. I mean, I hope England isn't dead, Byron. I mean, if England was dead, that would be millions of people who lost their lives. That would be that would be an absolute international tragedy. I certainly hope that Britain is alive and marches on. Tony's coming through like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible. You're just gonna hang there and drip sweat onto it. Is that what you're saying? No, no steel roof cracking. I imagine that if he was out there, you'd be able to hear it. He looks like a heavy walker, sort of a tromp around kind of guy. It's a fair question, Ontario. That's a very fair question, and I'm starting to ask myself that right now. Yeah, Tony. I'm not expecting any kind of SHTF. I just like being as not dependent on other people as possible. It's a good way to avoid taxes and rules. You shouldn't need pops. Yeah, I imagine that loud arthritis is definitely a hindrance to stealth. An old stripper injury. No, Tony, I don't need any pictures. That's okay. I get. I can see you here on YouTube. That's. I get my fill, man. Well, I'll probably get to wrapping it up here soon. Got to go to work before too long. What does everybody have planned for the day? Yeah, Corsair Trainers does have good, really good videos, and his reality check SHTF series is really good, which everybody should check out. Gonna get you a link for Corsair Trainers reality check series here. All right, Papermaker will be vacuuming the Husky hairball up from in the house. Kim Patton will be fixing a rocking chair by re-gluing some parts together. That's good. Scraping popcorn ceiling. That sounds fun, Tony. You gotta love scraping popcorn ceiling. Gotta love it. I don't even know who that is, Byron, but I might look it up later. I hope that's not racist. Yeah, Tony, you definitely need to go to whatever lengths are necessary to scare the women in your life. I once laid under my sister's bed for about 20 minutes waiting for her to walk in so I could grab her ankle. And that one pays off to this day. I mean, she still mentions how that gave her fear for years, and I still get feelings of reward from knowing that. So it's really one of my life achievements right there. Who's popping popcorn? I want some popcorn. Kraken is starting seed. Very good. I'm not starting seed around here. It's middle of winter, but high impact vlogs, recon. And, oh, okay, gotcha. Tony spends a lot of time hiding, guys. Well, that's cool. I'm glad you have a good school there, Byron. I will be getting off of here. I'm going to go get a little bit of coffee creamer and come back and get ready for work. And then go to work and sell people their vices. Yeah, Papermaker. You probably shouldn't sneak up at people in a loud industrial setting. I've seen videos of people getting drawn into machines. It doesn't look very fun. Speaking of fun, Ontario Homestead's going to go split some wood. That's one of my favorite things to do right there. Thank you, Detroit. You have a great day as well. Appreciate you dropping in and hanging out for so long. Hope you have yourself a good one. Wait, heroin? Ontario? What? Oh, vices. Yes. No. No, I don't sell heroin. I only sell the legally addictive things. Yes. Prescott is meeting up with the boys. Going to crack some cold ones with the boys to figure out how we're going to handle tomorrow in Richmond. Yeah, definitely be careful there, Ryan. I understand why you're there, but I'd just as soon no one I care about be at risk of harm or arrest for political reasons. But you do what you got to do and be safe. Oh, well, thank you, Detroit. Definitely always enjoy having you in here. You definitely bring a lot to the chat. Well, Kraken, vaping is definitely an up-and-coming vice. Definitely very popular lately if you need one to pick up. I don't suggest heroin. I hear it does bad things. Oh, Papermaker doesn't have moving parts. That's good because moving parts are dangerous. I would definitely suggest against interacting with moving parts. Oh, I'm going to have a blasty blast there, Palmetto. First, I'm gonna count some things. I'm gonna count a lot of things, at least 100 things. I'm gonna do my daily inventory, and then I'm gonna do my other daily inventory, and then I'll probably do some weekly inventory. So that's fun. It's gonna be fun. All right. Well, thanks, guys, for dropping in. Looks like everybody's got their things to get to. Appreciate you all being here for the chat. Appreciate anybody who did the rewatch, especially if you watched through all hour and 30 minutes of it. But hope you all have a great Sunday, great Monday if you're somewhere in the world that's already that far ahead, if that's even a thing. I think it is. Anyways, hope you're all doing well. Everybody stay safe out there.